What is the end game? So welcome to episode 2 of the Property Strategy Podcast. Joey doesn't look
Cool name.
Well, yeah. I was like, let's just call it Property Strategies, but what does that mean?
Property strategy what?
Yeah, but we're talking. You don't need to tell everyone it's a podcast.
Yeah, I know, but I just feel like property strategies is like, I'm waiting for
If there was a
more.
book on a bookshelf and it said Property Strategy, are you going to be like, that's definitely a Property Strategy book?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, you win. But you still said those 4 words, the Property Strategy Podcast.
Fine.
That's what we're rolling with.
Here we
no
are.
slogan.
So episode 2, really what we want to understand and unpack in this episode is like, what is your end game? Like, what do you actually want out of your portfolio long term? So last episode we talked about like what we want to do in these series, what they're going to look like. We talked about some different strategies and some of the mistakes that we've personally made on our journey. But now it's all about what you want. Like, you know, Simon Sinek says, like, what is your why? Define your why. And it's pretty overused in our space.
Yeah,
A lot of people talk about it. It's
agreed.
actually like real gimmicky.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily like it. So I didn't want to call this episode, what is your why? But what's the end game? Like, what do you actually want? Why are you investing? Like, what are the things that you want out of your portfolio?
Well, I think that's really, really important, right? Because like we said kind of in the last episode, were you just going in and stumbling in and buying a property because you walked past it on your way to a Thai restaurant, or for me, it was 100 meters away from mum and dad's place where I grew up, and I could go see, touch, and feel it. Like, what was actually planning on doing with that, like to go and fix the gutters myself. Anyway, what is the reason that you're doing this? There has to be a reason why, or is it because someone told you that buying property is a good thing to do, and that's the only reason why you're investing? So understanding.
And a lot of people start there. A lot of people hear like Uncle at the barbecue, oh, I've invested in property, it doubled in value, I've made all this money, it's a great thing. And so you kind of start, oh, what's this property investing?
Yeah, but then
thing?
like, why? What do you, even if after you've heard that story, what do you want out of it? Do you want the doubling in growth that Uncle told you at the barbecue, or do you want passive income, or like, what is the reason why?
Yeah, but I think it's a progressive thing, because even as you go through different stages of life, that why might change. So you might hear it at the barbecue, and you might be like, I just want to create more wealth outside of, like, you know, my 9 to 5 job.
income. Yep.
And that could be an original why, but it's not really a goal. It's just, I just want to build wealth. And I think this is where a lot of people get confused, is they go, I just want to build wealth. I just want to do this. I've heard property's good. Let's go do that. But they don't actually sit down and go, well, is this getting me closer or further away from the wealth that I want to build? And I guess that comes down to all the different types of strategies that we could potentially talk about. And we're going to get into a lot of them, especially with a lot of our partners that we work with.
Definitely.
And a few of these earlier episodes, we're going to talk in pretty heavily detailed about them as well. But at a very high level, there's kind of 2 strategies or 2 concepts that people talk about.
Yeah.
And that's capital growth versus passive income.
Yeah. So ultimately, what are you trying to get out of this? Are you trying to get a X amount of dollars of passive income coming through to you? And when do you want it? Do you want it in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? How old are you? Is that realistic? Is it not? So is there a passive income amount that you'd like to live off? And then obviously at the other end of the spectrum, or maybe hopefully hand in hand, is that kind of end equity position, that market value of your portfolio, that capital growth that you're chasing. And I might just throw a third one in there as well. Perhaps the other one might be an aspiration towards home ownership as well. And maybe that might be your reason why. So throughout this kind of conversation here today, I think we'll delve a little bit deeper into each of those. And is it possible to have it all? Can you have your cake and eat it too? What are the trade-offs? What are the compromises?
And look, we have this marketed to us a lot. There's certain businesses that'll just be down one camp and other businesses that'll be down the other. You'll read blogs about all these types of things, and it's kind of what we get taught. But the real crux of what we're trying to say is that is not a reason. Passive income is not a reason. Capital growth is not a reason. There is a reason behind why you would pick one of those strategies, but they're different things. So if you're going to go for a passive income play, particularly that's around maybe retiring early, generating income from your portfolio, being able to step out of the 9 to 5. And it doesn't have to mean, like, say you're earning 100 grand a year now. It's not like you have to earn 100 grand a year from your personal portfolio to be able to move. You might be able to get to 60 grand a year and go, okay, that's enough to like step down from working 1 or 2 days a week.
Or take the leap into starting your own business, right?
Doing something else.
People often go like, I have this passion, I want to do this, but I can't do it unless I replace exactly what I was earning before. But if you've got something coming through behind you, maybe that's enough confidence. Maybe it's 35 grand, for example, of an income stream coming through behind you to go, well, I'm going to give this a crack. And if it fails, at least I've got this backing behind me.
Correct. So that is a why, right? It's not about, I just want to build passive income. I'm just going to buy assets that are cash flow positive. That's not an answer. The answer is, in 10 years, I want to start my own business. I want to have the flexibility to have time to put towards this business. I don't want to worry about cash in the bank or money coming through. I want to be able to survive.
Yeah.
That is a why, right?
It's almost like you say passive income is your why, but it's what do you actually want to do with the passive income? That is your why.
Correct.
No one really seems to be able to answer. So not no one. Most people can't actually answer what that part is.
Correct. So we just want to help you understand what that is. And there's such a range of things. It might be like, even for like, parents that are starting to have grandkids now, it could be like, I just want to spend more time with the grandkids and have a bit of passive income so that I don't have to go to work every single day and not spend time with the grandkids.
One of my favorite ones was a past client came to us and said that all they really wanted to do was be able to focus on buying a catamaran and sailing around the world for 3 years.
Perfect. How good is that? Like,
who am I to tell you what your why is? That's your why.
100%. And like the life and again, I've said this a few times, but those whys change. As I get older, I realize, well, actually, like, for me, it was always about like, okay, I got this 30-year plan. I'm going to be able to build this massive portfolio and then I can retire and do anything. Where now I'm a little bit older and we're starting to travel a little bit. And like, now it's more about like, well, I want to live every single day right now in the best way that I want to do. I want to like wake up, fly Joe in and have like a day of yarning on podcasting because it's fun and it's what we used to do and it's exciting. Yep. Tomorrow might be, we're going to film podcasts again tomorrow. Maybe I shouldn't tell them, but we are.
Secrets out.
But tomorrow I might want to wake up and go to Japan and snowboard. Like that's.
I'll come.
I know you will. You and Christian are both getting up. So for me, like my why has changed along the journey, and so it's all about like.
And it might still.
Correct.
It might still in 2 years' time, your why might change all over again.
Correct, 100%. So
if only there was a platform that you can. I went to that again.
Derailing. So back to what we're talking about, passive income versus, building wealth within the portfolio, what I call capital growth. Capital growth, again, is not a why. Yes, it's a great strategy. Yes, you want to build some wealth within that property, but that's not a why. Generally, when we see people go for really high capital growth plays, it's generally because they want to build wealth for their family. It's a intergenerational wealth. It's a legacy play. It's like, what can I pass on to the kids or the grandkids? And generally where we see this come out most is generally those people that have had harder upbringings financially and they had to do the hard yards. They had to do the slog. They didn't enjoy their childhood or they didn't enjoy the first 20 years of their career because they had to work really hard to get themselves into a position where they could live a little bit more of a lifestyle. And so they want their kids and their grandkids not to have to go through that. And so they're happy to sacrifice more of their time, sacrifice more of their income towards a portfolio, sacrifice more years of work on themselves so that the next generation doesn't have to go through that.
Yeah, I think we see this time and time again where people who have maybe they've had experience in property and they've seen the properties appreciate over that period and they're even thinking about their kids or their kids' going, well, what luck do they have in terms of affording home ownership in 15, 20, 30 years time? So I want to try and help them through that. Or when we see it countless times where clients have got their owner-occupiers and some investments and then they're going, well, I want to have an apartment or a house for each of my kids. How do I kind of make that happen in the portfolio? So, and that's beautiful to see. It really, really is a wonderful thing. But I mean, I heard someone say this once and I don't even know who to give credit to because I don't remember who it was, but someone said to me that when you're on a plane, whose oxygen mask do you put on first, your own or your kids? And that could be something to think about as well, where I've seen this countless time where people have been so focused in on being able to afford a property for their kid and at the same time put themselves under more pressure from a cash flow perspective, trying to maintain holding these blue chip assets that at the moment are associated with really negative cash flow. And that's the sacrifice that they're making to try and help their kids in the future. Beautiful to hear and beautiful to see. But at the same time, you're looking at them going, well, you're putting yourself under so much pressure. And you also have this looming retirement goal in 10 years time, depending on what stage of their life they're in. So it's really, really interesting to see.
And I also want to try and help people peel back the ego a little bit. And I mean that in the nicest possible way, but even I get stuck on this sometimes where like I will compare myself, there's one individual who's 5 years younger than I am and has a portfolio that's 4 times the size. And I look at that individual a lot of the time and I go, man, I could have done so much more, or I should be doing so much more. But what their goals are, you know, they want to be a billionaire. And I don't necessarily want to be a billionaire. My goal, as I said before, is to wake up every single day and choose what I want to do. That doesn't mean I need to be a billionaire. It just means that I have to have more cash coming in than going out, right? And so strip that ego back and actually go like, what do you want out of life? Do you want to be on a Forbes magazine? Do you want to be a billionaire? Do you want, like, figure that thing out first? And if that's what drives you, then stick to that. But don't compare yourself to other people that are in a different position, and continue to invest or try and improve yourself just for the comparison's sake.
And I think even when we kind of talk about that passive income goal, for example, and we ask the people questions all the time going, okay, well, what is your passive income goal in retirement? And just throw an arbitrary figure around, like say 100K, because it's just really easy for people to associate with. But you ask someone the question and they kind of go, well, I don't know. Is it to replace my income? So I'm earning whatever 150K. I need 150K, or is it a nice round number of 100,000 because that's really, really easy to work towards? And obviously, when you're thinking about your kind of goal setting and understanding what your why is, you just want to make sure that those goals aren't too far-fetched. I mean, we see it time and time again where people are coming in and they might be on a household income of, I don't know, whatever, 200K between partners, and their goals are passive income goals are $500,000, and they'd like to get there in like 8 years' time or even in 20 years' time. But that $500,000 will inflation adjust out to 850 grand for argument's sake. Going, well, you're on a household income of 200K right now, and you seem to be living. You obviously got enough money that you can actually go out there and buy an investment property. What do you need with 500,000 every year?
Yeah, and we see, like, I see this with almost every single client, is they just want to replace their income, right? So if they're earning the 250, and they're being realistic, they want to replace that 250 income. But Joey just made a really good point. You're on 250 now. You're living a really great lifestyle. You've got enough cash to go in and buy an investment property. But when you're retiring and in that phase of life, you're not looking to go out and buy another investment property. So do you really need the 250? Probably not. And so it's just about understanding, well, what am I actually going to spend in retirement? Like, most people, let's say they have a goal of 150K, really only probably need 80 grand to be able to live the lifestyle that they're currently living, and not have all that. Like, you got to think about, kids will be out of the nest. You're probably not going to be living like lavish holidays. You're probably happy to go for a camping or a caravan park or on a cruise or something like that. You're not going to be going to Europe and dropping 50 grand every single year. You may want to, and that's okay to factor in. But there's so many expenses, I think, when you're working your income, like you work all year, you probably want to go to Europe and drop some money because you've worked hard and you want to go and enjoy it. But when you're retiring, you know, maybe it is just traveling with the family or staying with family. Maybe your holidays are to a family's house, and you don't have to pay for accommodation. So you just got to think about being realistic with what those goals are going to really look like, or what the end game is going to really look like, and not just go, yep, 250 now, 250 tomorrow. That's what I'm going to need.
Because I need 250,000 every single year. And it's really fun to see that for most people, right? As the wealth accumulates, as that cash flow in retirement tends to kind of accumulate and snowball as well, you probably figure that you kind of need a little bit less and less. And there's plenty of commentators out there that kind of say that retirement's broken up into like a few different phases of like the fun at the beginning, and then you kind of go through this period of a lull, and then maybe towards the back end when your health is starting to deteriorate. And obviously even trying to figure out how much you would need during that period. It's a part that personally I feel as though there isn't enough commentary in and around. Like, it's really difficult. Obviously you can go and speak to like a financial planner and whatnot, but there's a lot of lack of communication, lack of understanding and knowledge within that space that might help people kind of shape what that why is. And maybe that's part of the reason why people put this higher number in, because they don't know. And that's also completely fine as well. But we just want to really peel back to what's realistic, what's genuinely within your grasp. Because also if you set these goals, like coming back to my couple of 200,000 chasing 500,000, when you realize that that's actually not achievable, that starts to kind of eat away at your confidence and go, if you're putting some runs on the board, if that, for example, only takes you maybe 3 or 5 properties and you've already got one and you're on your way to your second one, well, all of a sudden you can kind of see, well, yeah, I'm part the way there. But if we've got this target of 500K and you're going to need 10 properties, for example, and you're going to need bazillions of dollars of deposits that just aren't there for you, it's starting to demoralize you, and you kind of go, well, is this thing really for me? And then maybe you step away from the space that hopefully is actually there to actually generate wealth for you.
Yeah, and the difference between putting in 250K compared to putting in, actually, I only need 80K, could be like 5 properties,
Huge.
which could be like, you know, another 10 years of an acquisition window. And so if you really define what that goal looks like, your buying window and your journey through property might be only 15 years if you do it right, rather than like a full 30 if you really want to take things to the extravagant. And I'll throw one more or 2 more spanners in the works. The first one is like a story about retirement. So my dad for the last 2 years has been planning this retirement. He lives over in New Zealand. He was managing 5 real estate offices. He's on a really, really good wicket. And he was like planning every single cent and dollar from the age of 62 to the age of 100 or whatever it was. He made sure that he had 50 grand a year, and then like inflation adjusted all these numbers. Like he was really, I thought I was bad, but he's worse.
I wonder where you got it from.
Yeah, exactly. Which is sort of like, I never would have taken him like that. And like he had everything mapped out and he was thinking about it, he was mulling on it for years. He actually caused more stress to himself worrying about this thing than just retiring, right? And so about 6 months ago, he officially retired, and it was like the biggest workup of his life. Once he did it, he was finally like really happy with the decision and like happy with everything that he was doing. And like 6 months later, he's just bored. He's like, I'm bored. I feel like I've got more in the kitty. And then like, now he's got like 4 different businesses he wants to start. He's been approached by like 2 other major agencies over there to come and run the team.
Busier in retirement than he was outside.
Yeah, exactly. And like he just can't believe like all the stress and anxiety that I put around this one thing, where now he's probably going to go back to work because he's bored, right? And so this is the whole concept of, don't, get yourself into that position where you can be realistic of what retirement is going to look like, but don't feel like once you hit that number, like that's it. There might be still things that you do on the side. If you want to sit on the beach and make shell bracelets and sell them for $2, like might find a way to find your extra income. Like there's so many things that you will do after retirement.
I feel like we're kind of discrediting the whole idea of investing. We still definitely are very pro investing in property. I feel like we're just kind of like being, don't ever retire. No, absolutely. We want this to become aspiration, but it's more around like being really clear with your goals and really importantly, being realistic, because like you said there, like if the goals are out and far-fetched, you're just going to be kind of being pushed even further away from them. So if they're within reach, then maybe only it requires a couple of acquisitions to get there. But I just definitely want to come back to the fact that we do like property and we do like investing and we do see it as a vehicle of wealth creation.
We do. We want you to retire and just go sit on the beach all day and not have to sell shell bracelets.
Well, it's about the choice, right?
Correct.
It's about the choice, the flexibility, because that might be a passion, right? It's about maybe kind of taking up a passion, stepping away from the 9 to 5, working for the man, maybe starting up that business that you have always aspired towards, but you just want a little bit of confidence knowing that you've got your obligations met, even if it's just the property portfolio is self-sufficient, and that's enough for you to go out there and take that leap towards what it is that you actually want to do.
Yeah. So the next point on the board is measurable. Do you want to tell us what measurable is, Joey?
Is it really? I don't even know what that is. No, but I'll skip along to the next one.
It sounds good though.
It does sound great.
I'm
No, you know what
curious.
it was? When I was thinking about goal setting, there's that whole like, it needs to be measurable and you actually have to be able to quantify what that means. But I don't like that.
Okay.
Let's push beyond that. And I think an even more important one is to make sure that we understand, I know we've touched on it a little bit, but I really want to kind of go a little bit deeper into this, that it's okay for your goals to change as well. So we kind of spoke about that, yes, you need to have this why and a purpose for investing, but to your point, your goals have changed and they probably will continue to do so. From when I first started to when I met my wife, goals change, and then kids, goals change, and then owner-occupier home, goals change, and things continuously keep changing. So it is okay for that to also be the case. And when we see it time and time again in what we do every day, and we kind of see it on the cold face-to-face with clients, that their goals and aspirations completely have changed, and that might then dictate the properties that are sitting inside their portfolio. And that's completely okay, which is obviously we just need to make sure that we can roll with the punches, evolve and adapt, and make sure that we are pushing for the greater good.
A really good example of this, and we see it time and time again, is most people start with residential property. They build their kind of wealth through residential property, and then they shift to commercial because it's a higher yield and brings in more passive income, and they don't necessarily need any more capital growth. And the reason we say that it changes is because now I'm at a point in my portfolio where I would be comfortable, and I talked about Steve McKnight in the last episode, and I'll say it again. He sold his 250 or 300 properties or whatever it is, and now he's only got 3 commercial assets. And that's what I was about to say. Like, I'd be perfectly comfortable if I sold all my assets and just bought some really good high yielding commercial properties. And that is an example of why a strategy might change. However, I couldn't have got to that position where I have the capital base to be able to make that decision if I didn't start the way that I started in building out residential
Correct,
property.
yeah.
So it's not necessarily like things are going to change, like, you know, don't be so strict on what you're planning and what you want to do because it's going to change and go out the window. It's more about like getting on the right path, having a vision, getting on that journey, actually taking action on the steps. Like, I think there's 2 different things between having a plan and taking action on the plan. We provide you with the plan and can help you visualize it, but you've actually got to take action on it. And as you go through those different stages, maybe when you have kids, you do want to have the principal place of residence and settle down. Maybe you do get the portfolio to a decent size where all you really want is yield, and so you're happy to sell everything off and get into those high commercial assets. It's okay for things to change. You just want to head in a trajectory where they can change and you can make those decisions.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a really, really important one. I know we kind of mentioned it a couple of minutes ago as well, but it's in and around that owner-occupied piece. So we kind of speak to plenty of investors where they've got this goal of whatever it might be. I'll go back to my example of 100K passive income. And then at a certain point, it's but what about the owner-occupier? And I know we'll probably touch on this in a little bit more detail when we're kind of speaking about owner-occupier in or outside a portfolio and that kind of taboo word of rent vesting. But it is really, really important. It's something that you definitely want to have in the back of your mind. Is home ownership important, and what does that look like? And I remember for me, first starting out the portfolio, it wasn't ever really kind of a big ticket item. I always thought that maybe it would be there, but I just got on with investing, and investing was the first step that I took. And ultimately that helped set me up for owner-occupier at one stage, at some stage. And again, coming back to the strategy change, the original strategy was passive income. At a later stage, family formation, kids and whatnot, it was then around, owner-occupier potentially. For me, it was yes. And we were able to potentially liquidate. We actually liquidated a property to help us get the deposit for the owner-occupier. And no, it wasn't a pretty one. It was something that needed a lot of work. And then...
Did you sell it to your brother?
No. Oh, yeah, one of the investments, yes. Shout out to you, Anthony, who then sold that to then buy his owner-occupier,
nice.
right? So then we all had a kind of nice dip in with that particular property. So then, yeah, he had sold that to fund his owner-occupier with his now wife. So same thing, right? So again, starting on the investing journey, it wasn't there as a vehicle to get into the owner-occupier, but it ended up being one. And it ended up being one for my brother as well, who actually used that as a stepping stone to get into his owner-occupier. So I suppose what we're kind of trying to get at, that's a big rock in the jar. And that fundamentally changes where things may or may not go. And we see this time and time again where you build out a portfolio, and then all of a sudden when we kind of focus in on an owner-occupier, that has dramatic impacts on where the overall portfolio goes. Why? It tends to suck a lot of cash flow out of the portfolio. If we're talking around whatever purchase price might be, maybe it's a 1.2 point something $1 million purchase. And if you're talking about an 80% LVR, there's a lot of negative cash flow coming through against that. And also where that has come from has actually come from potentially an investment property that was producing income. So you actually see there's a pretty big swing in the other direction whenever we talk about a PPOR.
And this really ties in really well to making sure that everyone is on the same page that you're investing with. So for example, in this scenario, you might be with a spouse now, and you might be getting into this property investing thing and be really excited about the potential of the passive income, the potential of building growth and handing it over to the kids. And your spouse might be really excited about the idea of buying the dream house and settling down and being near family and making sure that's all on. And so we see this time and time again where sometimes we'll sit down with couples together and they'll both come in, they've entered their data into the platform, but they literally start the call arguing because one person wants one thing and another person wants the other thing. And it's probably okay as a family unit or as a spouse to have those arguments and understand really what you want to do. Let's work through it and workshop it and get to a point where we're both happy and both comfortable. But I've seen it definitely in the past where like brothers have invested together or business partners have invested together or people that aren't necessarily like really entrenched family together, like a spouse
Family
couple
unit,
would
yep.
be, invest together. And that's when big cracks start to show, because they might go down some sort of path. Like, let's say two brothers start investing together at a really young age, right? And then one of the brother decides to get married. And they go to the bank to buy their principal place of residence, and the bank says, well, we can't lend you this because you've already got this other asset that you're liable for, right? You've got this loan that you're liable for. And so brother number two wants to sell because he wants to go and buy his house with his partner.
Yeah.
But brother number one's like, no, like, this thing's compounding, it's growing. I don't have enough to buy out your piece of it. I don't want to sell because of high transaction costs. And you kind of have these cracks where the strategy isn't aligned and you're not on the same pathway.
That's really, really, really important, right? And I mean, you kind of see it in, like, say, JVs, joint ventures, for people going into like a property development called like a subdivision, but that's okay to do with the business partner, because you got a kind of a finite start date and typically a finite finish date. You go 50-50, split the costs, split the profits at the end of the day. But that kind of family one, sister, brother is really, really, really important. And we kind of see that daily, or not necessarily daily, but we see that probably monthly, where you kind of have a couple of siblings that want to invest in property together, and you ask them the question, well, do you have a plan in play for what is the end game for this particular asset? I don't know is often the answer. And you're exactly right. You fast forward 5-10 years and you got one wanting to do this. I had a call with someone, and it was one sibling wanted to sell and buy the owner-occupier. The other one wanted to go and move overseas to Bali. That was okay because they had an end goal, and the end goal was within 5 to 10 years, we want to sell and split the proceeds. But what happens when one does want to hang on to the asset, or one can't afford to buy the other partner out? Yeah, it's really, really important that, even down to the exact property, what is the end game with this asset, not necessarily the overall portfolio.
Yeah, start sounds right. Like, you maybe you can't buy a property by yourself, but if you come with family or a spouse, or not a spouse, family, brother, sister, even parents or whatever it might be, and you can afford one together, sounds great, you can get in. But then what does that undo? What does that, like, what implications, what barriers, how does that impact your borrowing capacity, which is a finite resource, which we talked about last episode? How does that impact your long-term, what you individually want out of the portfolio, and is the person you're investing with on the same journey and want the same outcome?
Yeah, if we go back to the partners and everyone in agreement, like if I just give my own touch, I know I spoke a little bit about the PPI, but I was going down this kind of investing route, and to be honest, I looked at the numbers, ran it on the platform there, and could see how much better off we would do financially if we kind of didn't throw a big kind of chunk at the owner-occupier. That, for me, I was kind of like, I'd actually rather that cash flow coming through. And my wife was like, no, it's the PPOR. And she won the conversation. And I know plenty of people have heard me say this before on some calls that I've had. But I mean, for us, again, that would come back down to making sure that everyone was in alignment. I ultimately saw that, yeah, you know what, little one running around the backyard, it's nice, it's warm, comfortable. And so coming back to that, everyone on board, everyone on the same page, and just making sure that, I mean, for me, if I didn't take that initial first step and actually get into start investing, I probably wouldn't have been in the position to even worry about the owner-occupier. So coming back to what you said there, it's all well and good to have this plan in place, but it's also about taking action on that and being kind of calm, cautious, collected, to actually make sure that you're making those right assets.
And getting everyone on the same page as early as possible as well, because I can imagine you probably started investing by yourself.
Correct.
When you were younger, right?
Correct.
And then the wife, comes along, brother wants to buy the property.
Yep.
I know you didn't buy together, but these things have happened throughout the stages, and at some point you've gone, oh crap, now, wife wants a principal place of residence, and that throws a spanner in the works. And so, if we can, and I know you do this all the time with young clients in particular, they might have a certain income and they can only achieve X out of the portfolio, but then you'll actually go, again, you're only 22. At some point in time, you're probably going to have a spouse. Let's go and factor that in now. And then factor in if a spouse wants a principal place of residence or not. It's good to just sit down and go, like, what are all the things that potentially could change along this journey? And if that happens, there's a high likelihood that that's going to happen. If that happens, are we on the right pathway to strategically make that decision or to strategically make that move when it occurs?
What do you do in the instance where, like, for example, there is a couple, for example, and one is, and you might, we typically do see it quite often, where you've got one who's like the property fanatic, the property nut, and one who's like kind of just there going along for the ride, but is also equally invested as their partner would be. And like, what do you do in that instance? Like, how do you get that kind of realignment? I'm not expecting you to answer this question like this is something that, but what are the kind of some of the things that you've seen to help people along that?
Yeah, I mean, really, it all comes down to compromise. So there might be one partner that just wants to travel and holiday and spend all their, excess cash on doing that. That's what they want out of life. And at the end of the day, like as the investor mindset, this is like speaking to myself, as the investor mindset, and you want to put every single cent and dollar towards investing so that you can stop working as soon as possible. You got to kind of see how those things to like overlap and correlate. So if I'm putting every single cent and dollar away for a 10-year goal of being able to do nothing and go and travel and do whatever I want, but my spouse wants to just go and travel and do whatever they want now, like you've got to find the compromise in between. Like, there's probably some truth to being able to enjoy life right now, because I'm only going to be 30 once, and by the time I'm 50, bones will start to be sore. Maybe I won't get up as early in the morning. Maybe I won't want to go walk and travel as much as I do. So there is an element of like, enjoy the journey and, listen to the other spouse and compromise with the other spouse now. But you've just got to, both of you have got to compromise. So maybe it's only allocating, 30% of their household income to leisure and enjoying holidays and all that stuff. And the rest we're investing for, maybe it's not 10 years, maybe it's 13 years now, because we're taking a little bit longer, but then we can really go and allocate everything to enjoying and leisure after the fact.
Yeah. And I suppose that really kind of comes back to what we were trying to get out of this whole episode here today. And it's really just about kind of thinking about the overall bigger picture. Why are we doing this? Why are we investing in property at all? Why is it important? And I know for myself personally, just taking action on that first acquisition that I made was the very cornerstone of being able to build out a portfolio that includes a number of investment properties and an owner-occupier as well, which is a credit to initially taking action at the beginning. And so we want to just try and make sure that we are thinking about it as we're starting to go down this avenue. And you may already be one or two properties deep, and maybe you hadn't thought about it until this point. But if this is the first time you have ever stopped to think about it, maybe take this as the action there to pause, reflect, take it on board, and what are you trying to achieve? What is it that you want to get out of property? Is it just doing it for the sake of doing it? And in some instances, maybe that's not a bad thing, because usually taking some action is better than none at all. But what are we trying to get out of this?
That's what we mean by this. Like if you're two properties deep and you can buy a third, but you think there might be a possibility that you want to buy a principal place of residence in 5 years. Not that we're saying don't buy the third, but just have a think about, if you buy the third, you're probably going to have to sell one in 5 years to be able to buy the principal place of residence. So what is the best use of that capital? You're going to have to make sure that it grows by 10%, which, it probably should over 5 years. But just think about these things before you go and execute on it, because it could be 2 years before you have to buy the principal place of residence. And now you're capped on your borrowing capacity and you can't do it. So you have to sell, and you might not necessarily lose money, but break even. And then you're kind of like, well, all that hustle for nothing, essentially. What's the point? So it's just about sitting down and thinking long-term rather than making short-term decisions now.
So that's what is the property endgame. And I hope you've enjoyed it. Stick around for episode 3.
It's going to be fun.